welcome and welcome back to On God with me, Vilimina's Mono Mindful, Heartful, and Purposeful Conversations. If it's your first time here, you just found yourself a community of believers who are doing life with Christ one stumble at a time. And if you've been with me since episode numero uno, you know I super duper appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for holding space for the girl, as I have been holding a space for you. I know that's right. If you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, please do so. Let's get that subscriber count going up. Not that we care about the numbers. Someone actually asked me that, like, do you care about the numbers? I don't know. Because remember how in the previous episode I spoke about God, please hide me? I think I'm also at a point where I'm like, I also would hate for my platform to blow up and I still haven't unlearned certain behaviors, certain attitudes, because whew, I sometimes put the P in petty. Oh, baby, I will meet you at the basements of hell. But yeah, please subscribe if you feel like this little small community online blesses you in one way or another. Yeah, just, get that notification every time your girl drops, right? So yeah, ngayon red lips, ngayon red nails. I realized I should have done the red lips last week because I was also wearing like a cute little dress, guys. I love that dress so much. I'm always preserving it. Like I think I got it in December. I've only worn it twice. Three times when I was shooting last week, but I don't count that because then I just wore it and then I took it off. Guys, it hugs my body the way my body needs to be hugged. It really does. It's such a beautiful dress. I love it, you guys. I love it, love it, love it. So I'm realizing with the red nails and the red lips, I'm like, girl, you should have worn it. You should have done all of this last week because it really was the month of love. But yes, guys, the year is fast moving. Like, how are we? How are we here? How are we here? You know what I mean? So that's why they're like, the resolution, man, they start in December. January must just hit the ground going. You must just hit the ground going. Guys, you know what is a podcast episode without me plugging you guys to a new thing, a new purchase that I did. I recently got this cute little bag fragrance from Zara. It's called the Hypnotic Vanilla Bloom. So if you know me, you know I love smelling sweet. I love smelling sweet. And this year, what I've done differently is that I just don't want to smell like candy. I want to smell like vanilla because vanilla also has those sweet notes. You know what I mean? Especially when infused with like secondary scents like your orchid or burnt toffee. You know what I mean? Yeah, deliberately I'm doing the research. So I bumped into this little goodie do. I was at Zara and she smells amazing. She's the perfect addition to your little beauty bag that you carry in your work bag. Wanyana or obsessed. Another thing that I've been obsessed with are these hoops from the Minimalist. I forgot the name. I forgot the name of these hoops, but I'm gonna just pop it up because remember, yeah, no. So how's it? I love them so much. I used to think they are a bit too big, but it just turns out they are the perfect. They are actually the perfect size. I love them. Right amount of heavy. They are waterproof, hypoallergenic, meaning you won't react to them anyway. They are non-tarnish, and it's S925. I think it's S925. That's one of the best steels out there that makes for jewelry, especially if you want longevity, right? So you guys definitely need to go to the website and do what you need to do. Okay. And while you do that, let's quickly get into today's episode. Why Hannah is my girl. For those who do not know, Hannah is a biblical character. I think we find her. It's in the book of First Samuel's. I mean, I'm going to read that whole chapter. So, yeah, in the book of First Samuel's, my first introduction to Hannah or Hannah's character in its entirety was through one of my favorite pastors. Jackie Hill Perry. I think from time to time she always finds a way to bring Hannah in her sermons. And I remember just being sparked by curiosity that who is this Hannah? Who's this Hannah and Panana, right? But the more I familiarized myself with Hannah's story, the more I found that I am Hannah to a very large extent, especially because I am still in a season where I'm still praying for certain things. I'm still trying to manifest the presence of God over certain things in my life, my health, my career, especially because I just recently took a very big pivot and changed industries completely, right? So it's one of those things where I'm really in praying season. I'm really in praying season. 2 weeks back, I showed you guys the book that I'm gonna start reading, The Psychology of Money. So even praying to God over my finances, you know what I mean? Because I'm really, really taking them seriously. It's not enough for me to want to buy coffee every single day. Even though I'm not gonna lie, guys, this year it's a bit better because I kind of work for a company that subsidizes everything, my coffee, my lunch, like. So I'm really like, I'm taking money seriously, and I'm glad I'm also part of an organization that's helping me take my money seriously. So I find myself really like Hannah in terms of the things that I pray for, or in terms of how I am postured during this waiting season and this prayer season, where also simultaneously, and I think I spoke about this at the beginning of the year about how it's a very huge year of favor for me, but it's only going to materialize as a year of favor if I position myself, right? So, yes, I'm in a waiting season, I'm in a praying season, but also simultaneously, it feels like I'm at the verge of something very something very huge, and maybe not even material wise, maybe not even tangible wise, but even in terms of character, because I'm so invested in living a very consecrated life this year. I do not want to be lukewarm. I think there was a point in my walk with Christ last year where I got very lukewarm, I got very double minded, and we know how the Bible feels about double mindedness and being lukewarm. Literally, God says, I will spit you out. I really do not want him to spit me out. So it also feels like I'm at the verge of a very big breakthrough, whether in terms of becoming a woman of character, in terms of who God wants me to be, or maybe it's even over the things that I've been praying for, manifesting God's hand in them, and not just, small things, but the supernatural. So much so that, guys, there's not a single prayer that I pray where when they get answered, hello, when they get answered, no one is going to look at me and think she did that on her own. Everyone is going to look and say, God did that. Like, look at God, right? Look at God. So yes, this episode essentially is for anyone who is in a praying season, and they're praying really hard, for the big things, and you're still on your knees. You're still on your bedside every other night, every other morning, saying, God, remember your servant. This is for the person who knows on some days they praise, on some days they lament, but on both days they are still believing in God. Because another thing about a waiting season is that it doesn't make you faithless. It doesn't make you lose your faith. I think if you lose your faith, it's because you were never anchored in God to begin with. The thing about a waiting season is that it doesn't make you lose your faith, but it makes you more honest. I pray so many honest prayers like, yo, God, I thought I wanted this, but if I'm thinking about it, I actually want it because of pride. So either let's heal my pride, or don't give it to me at all, right? There's a chapter, there's a verse, not a chapter, there's a verse in the book of Proverbs, where the author was saying something to the extent of, please don't give me too much in case I become too big-headed and I feel like I don't need you, but also don't give me too little that I end up resorting to, you know lying, stealing, and I'm just paraphrasing it, right? So I also pray those kind of prayers where I'm like, God, if I'm not ready for this kind of blessing, hide me, right? Hide me. Let no video go viral until it's time for it to go viral. And that's an honest prayer. That's an honest prayer. So, like I said, I find myself relating more and more with Hannah. Before I start with the episode, I think it's only fair that I just read um, all of chapter 1. So it's First Samuel chapter 1. Whew, okay, let's get in there. There was a certain man from Ramathaim, a Zophite from the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah, son of Jeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph, an Ephraimite. He had two wives, one called Hannah and the other called Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah had none. Year after year, this man went up from his town to worship and sacrifice to the Lord Almighty at Shiloh, where Hophni and Phinehas, the two sons of Eli, were priests of the Lord. Wherever Whenever the day came for Elkanah to sacrifice, he would give portions of the meat to his wife Peninnah and to all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah, he gave double portion because he loved her and the Lord had closed her womb. Because the Lord had closed Hannah's womb, her rival kept provoking her in order to irritate her. This went on year after year. Whenever Hannah went up to the house of the Lord, her rival provoked her till she wept and would not eat. Her husband Elkanah would say to her, Hannah, why are you weeping? Why don't you eat? Why are you downhearted? Don't I mean more to you than 10 sons? Once once they had finished eating and drinking in Shiloh, Hannah stood up. Now Eli the priest was sitting on his chair by the doorpost of the Lord's house. In her deep anguish, Hannah prayed to the Lord, weeping bitterly. And she made a vow, saying, Lord Almighty, if you will only look on your servant's misery and remember me and not forget your servant, but give her a son. Then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life, and no razor will ever be used on his head. As she kept on praying to the Lord, Eli observed her mouth. Hannah was praying in her heart, and her lips were moving, but her voice was not heard. Eli thought she was drunk and said to her, How long are you going to stay drunk? Put away your wine. Not so, my Lord, Hannah replied. I am a woman who is deeply troubled. I have not been drinking wine or beer. I was pouring out my soul to the Lord. Do not take your servant for a wicked woman. I have been praying here out of my great anguish and grief. Eli answered, Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant you what you have asked of him. She said, May your servant find favor in your eyes. Then she went her way and ate something, and her face was no longer downcast. Early the next morning, they arose and worshipped before the Lord, and then went back to the home at Ramah. Elkanah made love to his wife Hannah, and the Lord remembered her. So, in the course of time, Hannah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, saying, Because I asked the Lord for him. When her husband Elkanah went up with all his family to offer the annual sacrifice to the Lord and to fulfill his vow, Hannah did not go. She said to her husband, After the boy is weaned, I will take him and present him before the Lord, and he will live there always. Do what seems best to you, her husband Elkanah told her. Stay here until you have weaned him. Only may the Lord make good his word. So the woman stayed at home and nursed her son until she had weaned him. After he was weaned, she took the boy with her young as he was, along with a 3-year-old bull, an ephah of flour and a skin of wine, and brought him to the house of the Lord at Shiloh. When the bull had been sacrificed, they brought the boy to Eli, and she said to him, Pardon me, my Lord, as surely as you live, I am the woman who stood here beside you praying to the Lord. I prayed for this child, and the Lord has granted me what I asked of him. So now I give him to the Lord. For his whole life, he will be given over to the Lord. And he worshipped the Lord there. Woo. A bit of a lengthy chapter. So that's chapter 1. If you feel like you want to read it for yourself, please do. If you have the Bible app, please use the Bible app. I love using the easy read version. My actual Bible is NIV. I need a new Bible. And then the Bible I use on my iPad is King James, right? I'm a girl who loves mixing it both, right? So we've read the story of Hannah, right? Hannah was the woman who Elkanah. Let's start. Elkanah married two wives, Peninnah and Hannah, and Banana was able to have kids. Hannah couldn't, even though Elkanah really, really loved Hannah. Though the Bible doesn't really clarify or specify, rather, that Samuel loved Hannah more than Penana, but Asiko love her, right? So year after year, she was unable to have kids, and Penana never missed an opportunity to make fun of her and ridicule her. And we know during that time to be to be infertile, to not be able to have kids was such a problem because it was seen as you not being woman enough, right? So we see a part in this chapter where Banana, on some days she's so angry that she doesn't even bother eating, and Elkanah tries to comfort her to say, "But I thought you love me. If you love me, why should you care? You can't have kids for me, right?" Then, even in the midst of her anguish, we still see Hannah kneeling before the Lord and saying, "Please remember your servant," right? "Please open your servant's womb." But even in the same prayer request to God, Hannah almost makes a bit of a bargain. I just don't have a better word for it right now. Hannah almost gets in a bit of a bargain with God and says, "If you give me this child, I will actually give him back to you so that he can serve you and praise you and live in your house for all the days of his life." And for those who knows their Bible, we know that Samuel went on to be one of the greatest prophets ever known in the Bible, right? He's the one that anointed Saul, the one that anointed David. So we then see that indeed Hannah kept her end of the deal. So even in her anguish, she still finds time to posture at God's feet. And I find that very admirable. And I don't know if I've already spoken on it on previous episodes, where we are saying sometimes, and the reason why we have the book of Lamentations, sometimes it doesn't matter that the bad things are happening in your life. What matters to God is that even as they are happening, you were able to come pray to Him. We see it with Job. He lost everything. And even though he was angry and lamenting God, he was still having a conversation with God. So we see Penana at the peak of her anger, at the peak of her anguish, expressing this disgruntlement to God, but also still making a bargaining deal with God to say, "If you do this, I will do that," right? Then the Bible says that at long last, God remembered her, opened up her womb, and she was able to have a kid. And after weaning the kid, she actually kept true to her promise, where she took the baby to the house of the Lord, and where we ultimately then get to see the Samuel that you get to read about, right? Hannah prayed from the deepest place. She prayed from a deepest place, which is where I find myself in present day, where she prayed from grief and not performance. She prayed from vulnerability and not volume, right? She prayed and not volume, because we even see in the chapter where it says Eli was looking at her, her mouth was moving, but nothing was coming out, to a point where they thought she was drunk. Her pain didn't disqualify her. If anything, her pain made her more honest with God. Because in verse 10, it tells us, "In her deep anguish, Anna prayed to the Lord, weeping bitterly." God is not scared of our desperate prayers. And sometimes I start prayers like that. I'm like, "Lord, these are the prayers of a desperate girl." God is not scared of our desperate prayers. But what we also see with Hannah is that she kept showing up, right? Somewhere in the chapter it says, year after year, Panana ridiculed her. Year after year, the Lord closed her womb. Year after year, Elkanah would give a peace offering and give her a double portion, even year after year. But she kept showing up, right? Hannah prayed repeatedly. And I'm two minds about it. You know, there's the part of the faith that tells you that, oh, you just need to pray one thing to God once. He heard you. If you keep repeating it, he doesn't believe you. I don't know how I feel about that. I think I repeat certain prayers to show God that these are the prayers of a desperate woman. I am praying because I am believing that it's gonna happen. And there are certain things you can pray for once and then move on. Like I keep telling people that when I was 26, I kept saying when I turn 30, I do not want to be in agency. I only said that once. So when this opportunity presented itself when I turned 30, is about to turn 30, I was like, look at this piece of prayer I prayed. And God still remembered me. So I think both can work. I think both can work, right? But we are being told here that Hannah prayed repeatedly even when nothing changed, right? Nothing changed because it tells us year after year after year after year. She returned to God again and again. Waiting did not silence her. Hope stayed alive through her consistency. In verse 17, because faith is not giving up just because you do not see it happening instantly. It is coming back. And sometimes we come back to a fresher perspective. There was a time when I was praying to God that I want to be a worldwide musician, and I kept praying. But the more I went back, I realized that I don't think I even want to be a musician. It's actually writing that I'm interested in. So we come back over and over again as an act of faith, as an act of obedience. But in turn, we sometimes end up getting revelation. Hannah lamented, but Hannah still believed. I don't know how it's going to look like when we get to heaven, if God is going to put a transcript of our prayers. But there are times where I'm just sitting there and I'm just so angry with God. I'm like, I don't understand. Is it not enough that I'm an orphan? I'm sorry, wrong joke, wrong joke, wrong joke. I am an orphan though. It's just that it doesn't bother me. Like I'm fine. But yeah, there's sometimes where I'm like, God, it's been 3 years. My soul hasn't encountered a God-sized miracle. God, it's been this much. My soul hasn't. But even after lamenting, there is this need to still believe. But God, you have done this for me before. How am I not believing that you can't do this again? And this is to say some days it's going to be heavy and you're going to want to tell God your bit. God, are you even real? Are you even close to the brokenhearted? You're going to question that. And on some days, you are going to trust. Hello. You're going to wake up and say, I don't know, but I just know you are for me and not against me. But the idea is that both are acceptable to God because in his eyes, you are postured at his feet. Faith doesn't mean we don't get angry. Faith doesn't mean we are at an all-time believing high point. Faith just gives room for the tears. Faith gives room for the disappointment. Faith allows us to say, your will, not mine. But what we see that's very tangible with Hannah is that Hannah trusted the outcome. She didn't know why her womb was closed. It was not closed because she was not born with it or whatever supernatural thing, but she trusted the outcome. And I always say, I think proof for me that she trusted the outcome was when she made a bargaining deal with God. I'm not saying go out there and make a bargaining deal with God. Just listen to your convictions. Listen to your convictions, right? Because there are certain prayers that I've prayed and I said, God, once this happens, this is my commitment to you and the house of the Lord, that I am going to do this even on my worst day. But it must be because you are convicted of it, not because you're just like, yo, you give me this, the things I'm going to do for you. No. So Hannah surrendered the how. If year after year your womb is closed and you're still praying for a baby, at this point you are not even looking at the how is it going to happen if it hasn't happened in the past 4, 5, 7, 10 years. But you're going to trust the who God is. You know what? I'm praying to a God that can temporarily suspend the natural order of things so that his way can happen. He parted the Red Sea. He gushed water out of rocks, gave the Israelites manna from above. When Joshua was in battle, he held the sun up. So sometimes we need to forget our logic and just focus on who God is. Focus on the God that suspends the natural order of things just so he can have a way for you. And that's why she made a vow in faith. That's why she trusted God's timing. That's why she believed in God's supernatural. First Samuel chapter 1 verse 19 says, and the Lord remembered her. I pray to anyone on this side of the screen that you say these words any point this year concerning the things that you're praying over, and the Lord remembered her. May the Lord remember you. May the Lord remember you on days where you had nothing but faith to continue going. May the Lord remember you for the days where it felt like this is the end, there is no other way. May the Lord remember the vow that you took in faith concerning the things that you are praying to him for. Now the prayers I have been praying, they haven't been answered yet, right? But one, we see how Samuel turns out as you read the Bible further. And for me, it's like when God finally answers, it becomes worth the wait. Hello. It's worth the wait. Because why? Our God has a tendency of doing exceedingly above and beyond. Hannah just wanted a son and said, if you give me a son, I'll take him to the church. But Samuel became one of the best and greatest prophets. Exceedingly. And even after Samuel, God gave her more children, right? Because restoration is not just about one blessing. I forgot which pastor it was, but it's a local pastor, and he was talking about restoration happens in multiplication. Restoration, when he says, I will restore all the years that the locusts have eaten, that is restoration. That's how restoration works with our God. And we see that with Hannah. God restored and multiplied. And how we know this is because in chapter 2, it tells us that, right? The Lord blessed Hannah and she conceived and gave birth to 3 sons and 2 daughters. In chapter 2, the story continues. The God we serve restores. So this is why Hannah is my girl and I am Hannah's girl. Because Hannah represents the girl that prays anyway. And if there's one thing that I've successfully done in my prayer life, is just pray anyway. There's an episode I did, I think sometime early last year, where I said waking up to the same unanswered prayers, but to still believe, to still go down on your knees and still expect God to move. We hold on to verses from the book of Ephesians that tell us, but to our God, who is able to do exceedingly above and beyond what we ask for. That's our holding grace, right? That becomes my holding grace even. As I show up every day to unanswered prayers and say, but God, I know that when you do it, it's going to be nothing close to what I even imagined, which is why I'm very sensitive during seasons of disobedience. That am I delaying what I've been praying to God about? So this is to just make someone else know that on some days you are allowed to sing at the top of your lungs and say, what a God, what a God. But on some days you are going to turn your Bible upside down and say, are you even real? How has nothing changed in the past 10 years? But every day, you need to still believe. I always say this, we are allowed to be angry at God. We are allowed to be disappointed. We are allowed to be embarrassed. We are allowed to lament, but we are not allowed to stop believing. That we are not allowed to do. You can do everything but stop believing in God, even in your valley seasons, where it feels like Your Lazarus has been in the tomb for 4 days, so there is no resurrection power. Even during those days, we are not allowed to stop believing. And I pray that God remembers us just like he remembered Hannah. That's all I have for you this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. If this episode has blessed you in one way or another, please do share it with a friend of a friend, an ex. I don't know. We are all about sharing the word. Because at some point in our lives, we are going to be confronted with a Hannah situation where we're going to need to show up faithfully in spite of our lament, in spite of our praise. But otherwise, please stay mindful, stay heartful, stay purposeful. As for me, love and light.